I'm Valentina Wilson in your community. The 1963 March on Washington inspired more than 250,000 people to head to our nation's capital and demand racial equality. Barbara Lee was one of them. She was just 16, 17 years old at the time. Now she's a lifelong civil rights activist. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio today. Can you tell us about the climate leading up to 1963? What was going on in Eastern Carolina, in particular, New Bern?
Well, there was the typical segregation everywhere. And it was the same thing here in New Bern. We have segregated schools and lunch counters and, as if it was everywhere else. And so that's the way that it was. And we were motivated to try to do something about it.
You were just a teenager. You
Yeah.
had to be a brave one, too.
I was.
Tell us about how the sit-ins came to be and which ones you took part in.
Okay, I was with the ones in 87, was it 86? And what happened was that there was a root beer place across the street from the bus station, what used to be the bus station, that had a sign in there that says whites only. They weren't the only one. There was others who had whites only. We even had a black and white fountain to drink from in the bus station.
And this was in the late 50s and 60s?
Yes.
This was going on?
Yes, well, most definitely in the late 50s. But in the 60s, and this was like 63, 64, something like that.
And so we know that some of those sit-ins also took place in the Crest Building, a place downtown that is
Holiday
now
Inn.
Holiday Inn, and also what is now currently a law office. Back then, it was something else. So were there meetings going on? How was all of this planned?
Well, there was a group of men and organizations in New Bern, like Reverend Buckshot Nixon and Reverend Mr. Bales and Reverend Alexander and Mr. Sampson, who got together with their organizations to organize youth groups. So I was supposed to be organized into a NAACP youth group. That's how this was all happening. And what made it interesting to us was that every time they would meet at the church called Root Chapel Church, they would serve us sodas and cookies. And so as kids, we kind of liked that. And they motivated us to want to make a difference in life.
Your parents, were they supportive of you being so active at a young age?
Well, I kind of think they would kept asking me, why don't I get in the back of the line? But I was always in the front of the line.
Yes, that bravery, that courage, and that fight to want to change things.
Yeah, because when we go downtown, people want to spit on us and throw ice and sodas on us and do some everything. But during that time, it was a nonviolent movement, so we couldn't say anything back. But I could have busted them.
You could have, and you did it.
No,
you
we did not.
actually sat there and experienced
We did.
all of this.
We did.
I shudder to even ask this question, though. How? How did you just sit there and take it?
Well, that was the motivation that we got from when they were teaching us how we're supposed to act in the nonviolent way. We're supposed to just sit there when people spit on you or throw ice on you or kick at you. And everybody couldn't do that. My little sister was following me down there, my cousin, and when somebody threw ice on them and or spit on them, they hollered and run. But others of us who were there, many of us, did not.
And you mentioned this was a nonviolent movement. Dr. King always wanted
That's exactly
civil
right.
disobedience.
We were followers of Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SNCC they used to call it, and we were taught that we should take it.
And we also know right before the sit-ins took place in New Bern, there were sit-ins in Greensboro, of course, sit-ins across the country. In the South, many of the places affected. So you knew that you were part of something big. Yes. Did you know it would be history-making?
We hoped it would make a difference in the lives of many people, But we weren't, I was so young, didn't realize what was getting ready to happen. But it was history making, especially when the college kids in Greensboro made that difference. Then when we came to New Bern, we made the difference. And the whole town, whole community rallied behind us. People from, I call Duffy Field and neighborhoods, when they heard that beside the root beer stand was a place where others went, and they'd be drinking and carrying on. They had vowed that if we were to march down to the root beer stand that night, that they were going to kill us. Well, then the word got out in the community, in the black community, especially Duffy, that was going to happen. So people brought out their guns and everything. They were across the street from the root beer stand, going to protect us. And so we marched, about 400 of us, down to the root beer stand. And then we get in there right quickly and sit on the floor, sit around. And then the police would should pick us up and take us. Well, Reginald Fraser, I'm sure you've heard of him, he was a lawyer across the street, and he thought something was going to happen, so he walked across the street and indicated for us to get up. So we got up and got on the buses. We had buses during that time that took us downtown with those others of us, the ones who were big mouth like I was, put us in the police cars and took us to City Hall.
So you were arrested or
Yes.
taken into custody as a teenager,
Yeah.
fighting for
We went to
civil
jail.
rights. You went to jail.
And all we asked for was some candy. We got in there, we want something to drink. But yes, they lock us up.
Endured lots of hardships so that people today could experience what we're able to experience, and just simply sitting at a lunch counter with someone of another race, going to college with someone of another race, all because of local heroes like you, and of course our national hero like Dr. King. I want to give you your flowers and thank you for doing this so that so many after you could just experience a better way of life.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about August 1963, when you boarded that bus to go to DC. 250,000 people or more. What did that feel like?
That was exciting. When we went around to get donations from the community who paid for 4 buses to go to DC. And it was exciting just to go there. We even went back again 10 years later. But it was really very, very exciting to be on that bus and not really, like you say, realize what was happening, the history it was making. But when we got there, I'm from Craven Terrace, from the projects, and had never been any place. And so we go to DC, and the people from the South who lived in DC, from New Bern, who lived in DC, got together and had food for us, all of us, and places for us to park our buses and things like that. So it was really there was a togetherness that you can't even explain. It was really great.
And seeing Dr. King in person,
Man,
and hearing that speech.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. Never forget it. Never, ever forget it. It was fascinating. It really was.
Fascinating. And it didn't stop there for you. You came back to New Bern, kept fighting, lifelong civil rights activist, even ended up with a career in politics. The first Black woman alderman in New Bern.
Yes, yes, that happened.
Major, major accomplishment. Didn't stop there, became a state representative, and you're still fighting to this day.
Every day.
Your career in politics, did that civil rights fight galvanize you for that work, and in what way?
It did, in that it just got into my spirit. It just made me know that it was unjust to be treated that way, that we don't have to be treated that way, that because of the color of my skin, I'm denied, or we are denied as a people, to sit down at a lunch counter. In Cresses, you can walk in the front door, and they sold hot dogs at the front door, okay? But in the back, they had lunch, and my mother-in-law helped cook the lunch. but we couldn't go back there and sit down
And you had to be served through the back
from the front. You had to be served from the as you walk in the
as you
door.
walk in.
They sold hot dogs or whatever they sold right there in the front that black folks can get if they want, or
But
anybody
you could
can
not
get.
sit.
Couldn't go in the back.
And now you are able to freely go to downtown New Bern, any restaurant you want.
Yes, I do.
Pay your money,
Yes, I do.
have fun, enjoy, all because of the fight that Dr. King, he took the mantle and he ran with
he
it. And
did.
unfortunately, it cost him his life and many others
It did.
their lives as well.
It did.
But being here and experiencing some form of freedom in 2025, what do you think of in regards to that?
I think that we've come a ways, but we've got a ways to go. I think the fight is still on, personally. There are those, not like it was. People are really kind to one another nowadays, better than they were back then. I remember, like I said, we couldn't drink water in the bus station unless we were at the black fountain, you know? That is really real in the city of New Bern. So nowadays you could do practically what you want, but there's still a segregation in jobs and opportunities and things that to be made available to everybody, not just a certain amount of people. It need to be where black folks can get there. But one thing that we had way back then that we don't have now is the motivation of adults to work with children. Children need that leadership. I know I needed it.
Yes.
Had it not been instilled but to me by those people who took time to do that, then we would not have been able to do it. But nowadays they need to have some, because children are shooting each other and doing various things that we would never think about doing. So they need somebody to give them some guidance. They need structure. They need
More structure. And final thoughts here, looking back on that 16, 17-year-old Barbara who had the guts
She was terrible.
to do, she was a fighter,
She
you
was.
know. What do you say to today's youth? What is our message to them? Where are those fighters and how do we continue to encourage them?
I wish I knew that. That's a million-dollar question. But we need to start.
Got to start.
We need to start with doing what we can do for young people. I organized a group called the Area Day Reporting Center, a place when kids are suspended from school can come and learn and be motivated not to be trouble in school. And so what we need is people to do various activities and things for children to make sure that they don't go astray that way, you know. But they will. That's how those gun shooters are made. They're allowed to just wander, you know.
And it takes the community coming
It
together
takes the
and the
community.
village doing its work as
village
well,
must.
just like you did
Yes.
in the 1960s. You know, the Forgotten 29 received their placard for organizing in New Bern. Many of them had already passed on.
Yeah, they're gone.
So many coming together to fight and to make a difference. And you were one of the younger ones.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we say thank you. And we will continue to nurture the younger ones to keep the dream alive. And that's what we have to do.
They're right.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for coming in and sharing just a small snippet of this story with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm Valentina Wilson in your community.